Clay, you should take two on this. The Drey Dossier. It's been a while since you put one out. Like I say, I don't plagiarise. And I don't try and reinvent the wheel that's already turning well, you know. Let's not fix shit that ain't broken. The tyre's not flat, leave it alone. Has it got tread on it? Yep. Is it gripping? Yep. Is it roadworthy? Yep. Leave it alone. The billionaire behind Britain's digital ID, and most likely behind ours. Oh, but no buts about it. Give it time. Pauline's going to bring it home. Bring it home, Pauline. Bring it home. I bet you that's what Barnaby says. Bring it home, baby. But Barnaby, the busy, buzzy fucking bastard.
Because the 9/11 hijackers had used their own real name, seemingly getting the government to back down.
Here we go. Right.
What is the UK digital ID? Why is Silicon Valley all of a sudden interested in migrating over to Britain? And did that petition that you guys signed, the one with over 3 million signatures seemingly getting the government to back down, actually change anything? You see, I've spent the last 5 weeks digging into all of this, trying to understand how we got this far and if there's any chance of going back. And the more I dug, the deeper I went, the more I realized, holy shit. You guys don't have a Keir Starmer problem. You don't even have a Tony Blair problem, though Lord knows he is involved at the center of it all. You guys have a Larry Ellison problem, just like we do. Now this video is primarily for the UK homies, but to my American viewers, still pay attention because this is just a preview of what's coming to America. Because Lord knows Larry Ellison is trying to get all this done in the United States, and we'll get into why he can't in a second. Well, at least why he can't yet.
Before it gets on. So the more and more you watch the Drey Dossier, the more you do digging, the more you start using your own brain instead of letting somebody else use it for you, you realise, yes, Donald Trump is a filthy, dirty, bankrupt bastard. He is the Raymond Reddington of the world. And what is Jeffrey Epstein? He's Raymond Reddington's accountant. The person he's not meant to be anywhere near. Like, if you really want a fictional version of non-fiction, don't watch The Blacklist. Raymond, I'm just going to call him Raymond from now on, mate. Everybody loves Raymond. Yeah, maybe not. Donald Trump's a crook, and he owes a lot of people a lot of favours. He doesn't just owe money, he owes favours, and he's compromised, you better believe it. He's a grub. He's the worst of the worst, and you'll think he's your hero.
But before we get into it, I'm Drey, and this is the Drey Dossier, where we like to investigate the infrastructure of technology and connect the dots to the political power that's ruling our lives. Think of me as Big Brother's Big Brother. They may be building the surveillance stage to watch us, but I'm building a YouTube channel to watch them. Very closely, might I add. So if you want to stay up to date on what these technocratic assholes are up to, then you may want to go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if this kind of work is important to you and you'd like to show your support, then go ahead and hit the like button and show some love in the comment section because it really does make all the difference. Plus, I try to hang out in the comment section for at least the first couple of hours once I upload, so hopefully I'll see you there. Oh, and one last thing if you're new here. Every video is paired with an essay on my Substack, the Drey Dossier, with a full index of all of my sources cited at the bottom of the page. Because I don't want to tell you what to think, I just want to show you how I found my answers. Anyways, I'll leave a link in the description down below. And without further ado, let's get down to business. So let's start at the beginning. What even is the UK Digital ID, or better known as the BRIC card? It's a biometric national identification card that lives in an app on your phone connected to a government database that contains every piece of information about you. Yeah, I'm talking every piece of information that exists. And the dangerous part isn't even really the biometric part, which is just a face scan that unlocks the door to everything else. We are talking about your NHS records, which are hospital records, every doctor visit you've ever had, every prescription, every diagnosis since the day you've been born. We're talking about your driver's license, your tax records, your benefits, your employment history, your criminal background, literally everything about you as a human being that exists. Oh, and for my American audience, this is not the same thing as the Real ID, by the way. Real ID is that star in the top of your driver's license, which basically just tells TSA that you can board a plane. And the more I learn about the UK's digital ID, the more I think that the Real ID is probably us inching closer to that national digital ID system. But because we have states' rights, we can't do that yet. And what's so dangerous about this is not even just the government having all of that access to every piece of information about you just behind one single door, but it also allows for government creep to happen, which means that they could allow employers to scan your face and then check everything about you, or landlords scan you, or banks scan you, like literally every transaction logged, tracked, and stored. So some of you might be thinking, well, some of my American audience anyways might be thinking, okay, well, why isn't this happening to us? Why are they doing it to the UK first? And the answer is that, luckily for us, we live in a 50-state system. You see, part of why we left Britain so many years ago and decided to become the 50 United States rather than just the one big state is for this very reason. Not because we knew that Larry Ellison was going to try to create some weird biometric national ID system, but because we like to have a fragmented government. It makes everything a nightmare, don't get me wrong, but it kind of accidentally saves us at the same time. You see, you can't build a centralized surveillance system if there's no center, no one single door to knock on. And the UK doesn't have that problem, which is why they have this problem. When Parliament passes something for them, it applies everywhere. One government, one system, one door. Now, I will say when they were a part of the EU, they had a bit more protection. Like, think of the EU as adding a bit of a moat in front of that one single door. I need to put this thing away. I'm going to just keep swinging it otherwise. You see, the EU allowed for a bit more of a blanket of protection when it came to data protection laws or privacy regulations or rules about what the government could do with your information. But thanks to Brexit in 2016, which we'll get to in a minute, all of that is gone. The moat is gone. Let's move over to the headlines, because in September of 2025, Keir Starmer, who is their Prime Minister, announced a mandatory digital ID if you wanted to work in the UK. Now, just to catch up, my fellow Americans, this pissed everybody off in the UK, like really pissed them off. And by January of 2026, nearly 3 million people had signed a petition, which is like the third or fourth largest petition that's ever been signed in the UK. And because of the vocality of the British and the Irish people, the government had folded. They did a 180 and they said that they were going to walk the digital ID back. Starmer said that the government's digital ID and the app that you have to keep on your phone will now be optional. However, the digital verification in order for you to work is still mandatory. They're just going to have you use private companies instead of going through the government directly. Companies like Yoti and iProve and Post Office Easy ID. But here's what nobody's explaining. When those companies verify you, they have to query a government database. Now, your right to work check will go through the Home Office system. Your driver's license gets verified by DVLA records. And who do you think runs the Home Office system? Well, as of October of 2025, Oracle does. They signed a $72 million cloud computing contract, which is equivalent to about £54 million. DVLA also runs on Oracle's infrastructure. In fact, they were just awarded a pretty significant contract for Oracle Premier Support in March of 2025, valued to be around £2.8 million. Or how about your NHS patient records? There's no way Oracle has their paws on that, right? Right? Of course it also still runs on Oracle's infrastructure. It's just through a different company called Cerner, which they did acquire in 2022 for £28 billion. That's right, you can't escape it. Oracle is at the center of everything. Oracle, I'm pretty sure, is running the world. So the choice you're getting is which app you want to open, not which company is processing your data. The surveillance state didn't stop at the gates. It just gave you a choice of which front door you want to open to the same building. And Oracle built the building. So who runs Oracle? Well, in order to answer that, we need to go back to 2001, and not in the UK, but instead to the USA, to a man who has been chasing this exact system for no less than 25 years. September 11th, 2001. Nearly 3,000 people are dead, and America has never seen anything like it. And to be fair, that fear didn't just stay in the US, it crossed the Atlantic. We were all scared together. We were asking the same question: how do we make sure to never let something like this happen again? And I have to say that the UK really had our backs for this. Like, they showed the F up. And I'm not talking about Tony Blair standing with George Bush or anything. I'm talking about you, the people. Like, you stood up for us in a serious way, in a way that matters, and we owe you a lot for that. So, thank you. And it's really important to have allies in moments like that, because in such vulnerability, unfortunately, there's a certain kind of person that will see an opportunity. Not even 2 weeks later, buildings still smoldering, bodies still being buried, Larry Ellison steps forward with a solution. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you'll know who this man is. But if you haven't, the TLDR is basically this. Larry Ellison founded Oracle, which is the database company that is running all of our governments, our banks, and our hospitals. He got his start doing contracts with the CIA, which is actually where the name Oracle came from. It was the first contract that he had worked on with them. He's also the second richest man on Earth, next to Elon Musk, who also just so happens to be his best friend, and he's the largest private funder of the IDF. So, he's the whole package, I guess. Oh, he's also an 82-year-old systems megalomaniac whose obsession with surveillance would make even George Orwell blush. Okay, so 2 weeks after 9/11, Larry Ellison goes on to the San Francisco News with his pitch to the nation. Biometric ID cards for every American, complete with fingerprints and iris scans and facial recognition, all stored in one large database. And Oracle would provide the software free of charge. How generous of him. But unfortunately for Ellison, America said no. Full stop. And what is truly wild about this is that everybody agreed, like across party lines. It was unanimous. The ACLU joined forces with the Cato Institute, and privacy advocates linked up with guns rights groups. Like left, right, and center, they all came together for this one just to give Larry a good old slap in the face. And their reasoning was not outrageous. It was actually quite simple because the 9/11 hijackers had used their own real names and documents. So having a national database would not help anybody. It would not have stopped anything. And on top of it not solving any national security issues, everybody saw right through Ellison's profit motive. I know it's hard to believe, but this was back when we had standards, apparently. And in fact, this idea was so hated upon that in 2002, Congress passed something called the Homeland Security Act, which contained language explicitly prohibiting a national identification system, making it banned by law. So Ellison backed off and the idea died. Well, at least in America. But the UK never said absolutely not. They never banned it. They never fully closed that door. And that's all Ellison needs, is an unlocked door. Because if there's one thing you need to know about Larry Ellison, it is that he is a very, very patient man. Which brings...
Yes. A very patient man who lives among a group of people who seem to live to like 108 and more. He's 82. And he's been building this his entire life. If you think anybody involved in all of this bullshit that's going on is like a flash in the pan and they've been around for 5 minutes and it'll be over tomorrow, think again. They learn from the mistakes of the past. How? And to what end? To the end that they desire. These are megalomaniac, egotistical nutcases. Narcissistic, like born with grandiose narcissistic personality disorder and psychopathy up the wazoo. They're not good people. But they're really good at coming across like they are. So someone who's annoying and abrasive, at least you know where you stand with them. People who only come to your rescue when they've got something to benefit out of it, they're the people you need to distance yourself from. They're not good people. They come across like good people. They'll even throw money at you. Taking advantage of the fact that maybe you need money, so they'll never actually throw at you what you deserve, what you're earning. They're trying to cut a deal with you at the same time. I'll help him out. No, you're helping yourself out, mate. These are the people that get angry when they don't get the better of you. In general, you will see it in low end of town business. And you're doing it hard, and then your mates, oh, I can help you out, I need this card, and only if you look after me, I'll get more work for you. Step back, think about it. How's that going to help you? So you're going to do shit for next to cost when you're already struggling financially? You know you have to float your business right on top of turn a profit to feed yourself and your family. We have a door already open. It's already all there, ready to, it's a turn switch. We have a turnkey digital system just waiting to be switched on. It's all there, everything. It came in with the, we won't enforce you to take a vaccination, but if you work for a company that has a government contract, we can't be responsible for whether they make you do it or not. Down Elphingston. Down River Road at the end there. We couldn't run a chook raffle, but that's way too much money. You will have to take the vaccine, otherwise otherwise you won't have a job here. Alright, I'm a spray painter. I never leave the spray booth. I'm covered in chemicals all day that will kill any germ at 50 foot. I never leave the premise. Why do I need to take it? Because you work with people that will be going to the hospital. Right. I work with people that will be going to a hospital to work in a new part of the building that's outside, and I never leave the spray booth, and nobody comes into the spray booth because, hey, it's a spray booth. See ya, bye. That's how that went. Walked away from just under $40 an hour. So don't tell me that you've made sacrifices financially. I was running the show.
Brings us to 2003, which is the year that everything really kicks off. So I need you to pay very close attention here. Starting on February 5th, 2003. Two very important things happened. In New York City, Colin Powell is standing in front of the United Nations, holding up a small vial of what he claims to be anthrax and presenting a case for invading Iraq. I mean, every network is broadcasting this live, and the entire planet is watching Colin Powell essentially make the argument that will lead us into war. And on the same day, and I mean the exact same day, Oracle quietly signs a government-wide agreement to replace all legacy systems across UK public sector organizations. And y'all, this is not some minor IT contract. This is the foundation in which Oracle can get into every single department, every agency, and every system in the British government. And I don't know about you, but I find the timing here to be quite interesting because not even 5 months earlier, he was trying to build a surveillance database system in America that got banned by law. And now, not even 5 months later, Oracle is signing a deal to become the backbone of the entire British government, and Larry Ellison chose to do it on the same day that the world's media is focused on Colin Powell selling a war. I mean, it's kind of brilliant when you think about it, because nobody's writing headlines about database contracts when you have the Secretary of State waving around fake anthrax, which brings us to June 23rd, 2003. Larry Ellison visits 10 Downing Street and meets with none other than Prime Minister Tony Blair. And this, by the way, is the first time the two of them are seen together publicly. A photograph was taken, but nobody has a transcript of what was discussed, so the official story is that Ellison was there to donate computers to one of Tony Blair's schools. Very generous, very philanthropic. Now, okay, this is when it gets good, so follow with me here, okay, because this timeline is very important. On September 29th, just 3 months after meeting, Tony Blair publicly endorses ID cards for the first time ever in his career. 29th, before June 23rd in 2003, Blair never, not one time, mentioned ID cards. Before September 29th, not a word. Well, actually, there was one time in 1995 that he actually called a similar proposal, which was like a different kind of national ID cards, a waste of money. Only time he ever spoke about it, and 8 years of silence until he has one meeting with Larry Ellison, and all of a sudden, he's all cuckoo for digital ID systems. But it gets even better because on November 11th, 2003, Home Secretary Dave Blunkett announces biometric ID cards with fingerprints, iris scans, facial recognition, and a centralized database. The way this is the exact same system that Ellison had pitched to our country weeks after 9/11, which got turned down by the Homeland Security Act. He's rebuilding it in the UK barely a year later. And keep in mind that during all of this time, that we have invaded Iraq. The UK and the US have invaded Iraq under false pretenses. And while everybody's distracted, Ellison is literally creating the backbone of an entirely new UK system. Now fast forward to 2006, and Oracle is not only running 10 out of 15 government departments, but also he's running 70% of NHS trusts. That's how quickly it happens. And again, all of this while Iraq dominates all of the headlines and nobody's paying attention to any IT procurement, because this is boring in comparison. And then in May of 2006, the UK national ID officially passes, and Blair and Ellison get their win. But then all of a sudden the skies part and you can see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, because Blair is now damaged goods at this point. Iraq completely destroyed his career. He became known as Bush's poodle and the man who lied about weapons of mass destruction in order to invade this country. And so by 2007, Tony Blair is forced to resign in disgrace. And now we are in 2010, where there's a new government in the UK. And this new government decides it's a good idea to go ahead and scrap this UK national ID card situation, because they said it was a waste of money and they just didn't get the purpose of it. And luckily, at that point, only 13,200 cards were ever issued, despite over £5 billion being spent on them. So ID cards are out, which is great, but here's what doesn't change. Oracle's infrastructure. That, unfortunately, stays the same. Wait, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. So in 2009, Tony Blair, disgraced and out of office, is photographed on a yacht off Sardinia, just living his best life. And whose yacht do you think he's seen on?
Larry Ellison.
None other than Larry Ellison's, of course. Let's go ahead and jump forward to 2016, Brexit, because this is unfortunately the beginning of the end, I think, for the UK. So in a nutshell, the UK votes to leave the European Union. Now, there are a lot of levels to this and a lot of nuance that are worth exploring in another video at another time, but here's why this matters for our story. Because when the UK was inside the EU, they had to follow something called GDPR, limiting what governments and companies can do with your personal data. Remember that moat I mentioned earlier? This is that moat. This is the example of that. And so when they left with Brexit, so did that level of protection. Well, not immediately anyways, because they still needed to be able to move data back and forth between Europe, hospitals, banks, and companies that all depended on that when they were combined under the EU. So in 2021, the EU gave the UK something that's called an adequacy decision, which is basically Brussels just saying that for now, your data protection is good enough, so we'll keep treating you like a safe place to send EU citizens' data. For now. But with it came a sunset clause, which means that by December of 2025, the EU reviews and they only renew if the UK maintains essential equivalence. So there's a clock ticking now, and Ellison, Oracle, and the Tony Blair Institute, which we'll get into in a minute, are all racing now to get their infrastructure in place before Brussels decides that the UK has drifted too far and slams the door on all of the EU data sharing. Brings us to 2018, where things get messy. And I'm talking like soap opera level messy. I'm talking Real Housewives of New York City Season 4 Scary Island messy. Yeah, sorry, I had to zoom you in for this one. So in January of 2018, Larry Ellison relaunches his foundation, the Ellison Foundation, in the UK, and he hires two very specific people to run it. So first, he hires Matthew Simmons, who's a British journalist who co-founded the independent newspaper and spent 22 years at The Economist. He also wrote Ellison's biography back in 2003, I think it was, and Ellison pays him over $600,000 a year for this position, which is... And the second is Richard Meredith, who I forgot to write on the board, but he spent 28 years with the British Diplomatic Service with senior positions in national security. Oh, also with making around $600,000 a year. Now, Matthew Simmons has a daughter named Carrie Simmons. Now, if that name doesn't seem to really ring a bell, I'll bet you this one will. Carrie Johnson, wife of Boris Johnson. But not in 2018, because in 2018, Carrie was not married to Boris. Boris already had a wife. Yet he was still sleeping with Carrie, allegedly. So let me be very clear about what is happening here. In 2018, Larry Ellison hires the father of the woman who at the exact same moment is having a secret affair with Boris Johnson. Larry Ellison, you messy bitch! What are you doing? But by 2019, the whole affair goes public, and the police get called over to Carrie and Boris's flat over some dispute, and the whole thing blows up over the tabloids, and and Boris gets a divorce, and it's all just very, very messy. And during all of this, Larry Ellison is moving his foundation to London, and Boris becomes prime minister, and Carrie moves into Downing Street, and now Larry Ellison is plugged in. By September of 2020, Larry Ellison decides to shut down the Ellison Foundation. Suddenly, abruptly, the whole operation is now just gone. And he said it's because he wanted to refocus on the COVID-19 response in the US, and I just think that that's kind of a funny excuse considering that the Ellison Foundation's whole thing is already health. Like it's a medical foundation. So, and what's additionally interesting is that I couldn't find any big donations to any COVID-related causes during that time from Ellison, but there is one really big investment, and that is to Tony Blair of the Tony Blair Institute. I mean, he is a virus, so I guess it technically counts. Okay, so what does the Tony Blair Institute actually do with all of Larry Ellison's money? Because he is the one backer behind the Blair Institute. Like, that is literally how they make their money. And according to the people who worked there, meaning for the Tony Blair Institute, it is basically just a sales operation for Oracle. Tony Blair goes to all these different countries and hawks Oracle equipment at them. The same way that the two of them did in the UK in 2003, they just go to, South Africa, to Australia, wherever, and they start setting up the infrastructure for Oracle to now be the surveillance apparatus that every other government database has to work through. And a lot of staff had described that they had to push this Oracle technology to countries even if they knew that it wasn't in the best interest of the country. And one staffer even warned that all of these deals that they would use would trap governments into systems that are initially free but then would start charging in the future. Sound familiar? So now we move to 2022. Where are we? Oracle buys Cerner Health. Oh God, Oracle buys Cerner Health. This is not a good one, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so Oracle had a problem. They were embedded in the UK government at this point, but the actual patient records, like the medical data itself, still belonged to a company, and that company was called Cerner. Most people probably haven't even heard of Cerner, but it's already inside most hospitals, in the US for sure, but also in the UK through the NHS. And Cerner makes software for hospitals to track every patient interaction, every diagnosis, every prescription, every lab test, every surgery, anything regarding the hospital. Cerner has that information. And by 2023, all hospitals across London, Sheffield, Milton Keynes, and all of Northwest London were running on Cerner. Oracle had the pipes, and Cerner had the data. So what?
When we think about our medical system, our hospitals and personal medical records that we can't get access to, by the way, don't see if you can get access to your own medical records. Full comprehensive, unredacted, legitimate, itemised by every little thing medical records. Go to FOI and see if you can get your medical records and see how much of it's blacked out. Yeah. Why are they keeping secret medical records on you? That's the question you should be asking. How is it that somebody else has access to your medical records unredacted and you get it redacted? That's the question you need to be asking. Why is that redacted to me when that is me? That's my meat wagon. That's my health. That's my medical records. These are the questions you need to be asking. Why? Why? But nobody's worried about the why. Everyone's worried about the how, but nobody worries about the why. Why are you doing this? Yeah, we're doing this because... No. We're doing this, and it's all been discussed with the people for projects that have been approved. Okay, what are the projects? Revitalisation of the CBD. What does that mean? What does that entail? What are the hows on it all? How does this improve our life? How does this benefit the local economy? How does this benefit offshore economies? How can we get in on this so that we ourselves can have contract in this without having to digitise our identification, our very soul, our very existence? Why do we need to digitise our very existence just to live? So many people are so worried about the how. How do I get around this? How do I get on in life? But they're not asking the why. Why do I need to ask how? Yes, we need to work on the solutions on how do we navigate this without. How do we get around this turd without getting shit in our boots and tracking it into our house? They're the hows. Because nobody's been asking the whys for so long that it's going to be difficult to avoid it unless we walk in the opposite direction to it. It stinks over there. Don't go over there. Why? It stinks. It's hell. Do you know where hell is? Do you know where the physical hell is? There is one. It's in Jerusalem. Didn't know that? Did you know that? There is a hell on this earth, and it's in Jerusalem. It's a rubbish dump. It was where all the lepers lived. All the outcasts, all the people that were thrown out. But then we had humanitarians that felt sorry for them, and now they just run around biting the hand that feeds them. Instead of us judging, and you know, I know this is sideways. This is way sideways on it. But I won't run on a tangent if I can help it. I know I'm bad for it. Instead of us doing all the judging, which we shouldn't be, and having dominion over people, which we shouldn't have, how about we just don't deal with them? Sorry, this is your problem to deal with. You're going to have to go fix that. You need to fix it somewhere else because we don't want your problem. It's for you to judge yourself and fix it yourself. Bye. People tend to start behaving real quick without having to have cameras on them. If the digital gooses, the digital gronks can't interact with the real world. You see how we can flip that script? No, sorry, we don't want to deal with you. Why? Because you tried to digitise us out of existence. Don't have anything to do with it. Go away. Go see if you can eat your Bitcoin. See how full you feel after mining a bunch of Bitcoin. Go in your virtual world and eat some Minecraft turnips or something. See how you feel after that. Not real full, still hungry? That's on you, buddy. Go grow some food of your own. It's not judgment. That is called consequence. We're in the age of consequences. And the consequences of doing nothing are severe. But what are you going to do? Something negative or something positive?
What does Larry Ellison do? He buys Cerner for $28 billion. And just like that, Oracle is now inside the NHS all the way. Okay, well, I don't know why I said it like that. Sorry. You know what I mean. And he said publicly on the record that he wanted to aggregate healthcare data on a national or even on a global level. Which brings us to 2024, and the Labour Party wins. Keir Starmer is the new Prime Minister of the UK. Now, for my American viewers, the Labour Party is kind of like the Democratic Party. It's supposed to be the party of the working people, the unions, public services, that kind of thing. And up until this point, the Conservatives had been in power for 14 years or something like that. And so people were fed up and they were really thrilled that the Labour Party had won, and that just felt like a really big deal. Now, I wish I had nicer things to say about Keir Starmer, but he has, unfortunately, the spine of a chocolate eclair, as John Mulaney's dad would say. I mean, just look at the patterns here. Starmer appoints Peter Kyle, a former advisor in Blair's government, as technology secretary. And then Peter Kyle comes waltzing into the office talking about how governments need to show a sense of humility towards big tech companies. And then he tells all of the officials to go over and work with TBI, the Tony Blair Institute, on the National Data Library project that he is almost certainly working on with Larry Ellison, literally emailing his team saying that he's attaching the initial scope and paperwork from TBI here for you to look at. Boop. Yeah, he's got an agenda, clearly. And then just in case you were confused who's really in charge here, Tony Blair then meets with Peter Kyle and recommends that he gets a briefing from the Ellison Institute of Technology. And then the Ellison Institute of Technology is run by none other than, you guessed it, Larry Ellison. Not to be confused with the Ellison Foundation. I mean, at this point, the dots connect themselves. I mean, do I really need to even make a board at this point? Now we've made it to 2025, and a lot happens this year. Starting in February, when Tony Blair and Larry Ellison go on tour, their two-man show, where they open in February at the World Government Summit in Dubai. That's right, the UAE. Because if you want to do surveillance right, you got to go where the professionals are. And nobody does surveillance quite like the UAE. They know what
Woohoo! As Jimmy Carr would say. Who has spent, how long did he say? Half of his military career in the United Arab Emirates? Say it with me now. Ricardo Bosi. So, that said, I think maybe we should be a little bit more cautious of Mr. Bozo, Ricardi Bozo. I think we should be very, very cautious of Ricardi Bozo. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of deep diving because, gee, I get along so well with my GP. I mean, real well. I'm one of these few people who she is pissed off with my file of my past affecting mine and my children's here and now, medically. She's absolutely livid over it. She lets me read it. Ha! I'm not going to say who it is. I don't want to get her into trouble. And she lets me read it. She lets me see everything that's on that screen. She shows me all of my blood tests, screen tests, drug tests, everything. Everything. And the person that started the negative file is in the same clinic. I don't know that she's aware of that. I will be having words with him one day. Just words. Only words. It's funny because he looks at me now and he looks like he's seen a ghost. He's realised he started the bad file on the wrong person. It's not going to hurt him physically, but my God, is it going to hurt? The man who pushes vaccinations left and right as if like they're lollies at a pedo convention. Grown man nearly dies from chicken pox. Oh dear, how'd that go for you? Perhaps you should have just caught it when you was a kid, like everyone else. Anyway, I'm going to do some deep diving and see what connections we have with Oracle and CERN.
Or two about tracking a citizen or two. And the auditorium is full of premiers and ministers from all around the world. And it's quite the sight, actually, because Tony Blair is on stage just like looking quite small, and Larry Ellison is blown up huge behind him on this giant screen. I'll find a picture and show it to you guys. And Larry looming over Tony Blair like that is just everything to me.
Well.
But anyways, this is actually a really important conference. There were a lot of interesting talking points. And by interesting, I mean horrifying. Because Blair asks about what governments should be doing when it comes to AI, and it's quite the sight, actually, because Tony Blair is on stage just like looking quite small, and Larry Ellison is blown up huge behind him on this giant screen. I'll find a picture.
That's an 82-year-old man. That is an 82-year-old man. Does that look like an 82-year-old man to you? What is this guy doing to look like that at 82? There's something so unnatural about that. Look at all the duckers. Now, okay, quick disclaimer. Oh, but I thought you liked Muslims. What do you think you're looking at Muslims there? No, you're looking at people that pray to the god of oil. You're looking at a bunch of idolisers. They idolise things. They idolise money, oil, gold, shiny objects, women, Bugatti Veyrons and the like. They run out of petrol in a Lamborghini and leave it there. That's right. That's. They also are not Islam. They're just greedy and filthy animals. Anyway. Geez, you're racist, David. No, I'm not. I'm realist.
And show it to you guys. And Larry looming over Tony Blair like that is just everything to me. But anyways, this is actually a really important conference. There were a lot of interesting talking points. And by interesting, I mean horrifying. Because Blair asks about what governments should be doing when it comes to AI, and Ellison, giving his best tips, says that the first thing any country needs to do is unify all of their data so that it can be consumed and used by AI models. But then he gets specific, and this part is really important. Larry says,
if you want to improve population health, you have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. And in the Middle East, in the UAE, for example, they're incredibly rich in data. They have a lot of population data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models.
It's fragmented. That's an interesting word, especially considering that 2 weeks later, the Tony Blair Institute publishes a report saying that the UK data is just too fragmented and unfit for its purpose. And then like clockwork, in March of 2025, Oracle announces that they're going to be investing over £5 billion in UK cloud infrastructure. And so just in case you weren't clear about who is running your government in the UK, on September 24th, 2025, the Tony Blair Institute publishes a report that's titled Time for Digital ID, okay, on September 24th. And then the next day, the very next day, on September 25th, Keir Starmer announces that there's going to be a mandatory digital ID. And in 2026, this mandatory digital ID is going to start to take effect because remember that sunset clause? It ends this December 2025. And when you look at it, just all in front of you, written out like this, the visualization of it, it's 25 years that Larry Ellison has been pushing for this digital ID, this biometric digital national ID system. He offered it to America after 9/11, and they said no. He tried to build it in 2003 through Tony Blair in the UK, only for a new government to come in and just scrap the whole thing. And in the meantime, he embedded Oracle across the entirety of the British government, the NHS. He hired the Prime Minister's father-in-law, poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Tony Blair's Institute, and now, in 2025, it's all finally happening for Larry Ellison. But it's not without backlash. Nearly 3 million people would sign a petition, and polling shows support collapsing from around 50% down to below a third. And then there's Northern Ireland, which is a whole other thing because they are completely losing their mind over this. They are incensed over this, and for good reason, by the way. Because Ireland has always had a very tricky relationship when it comes to the UK, because they often get treated like immigrants, and a lot of these national IDs and surveillance apparatuses treat them as othered, and it works against them, which is why the Good Friday Agreement exists and was signed in 1998, and it ended decades of conflict, and one of the key provisions of the Good Friday Agreement was that people in Northern Ireland can identify as British, Irish, or both if they would like. No ands, ifs, or buts. It is their choice, and it is absolutely fundamental to peace. And as if a digital ID system isn't bad enough, you have Keir Starmer referring to this as the Brit card, and it literally has British baked into the system, and Northern Ireland is not having it because they know that this is just going to work against them in the end, because that's how this shit works. And here's the thing about Northern Irish politics. Sinn Féin and the DUP agree on almost nothing. It'd be like a Bernie bro and a MAGA bro trying to agree on something. Like, it doesn't work. It's a knife fight on a good day. However, they agreed on this. They agreed that the Brit cards are bullshit and that they should all be against it. And so you have to think that if you've managed to somehow get Sinn Féin and the DUP to agree on something, that you must have really, truly, royally fucked up. Which brings us now to January of 2026, and you've got the government announcing a U-turn from all of the backlash, and Starmer says that the digital ID for the UK will now be optional. Now, all the newspapers say that the people won and they fought the good fight and the petitions worked and this is democracy in action. The government listened. We are victorious. And I'm so sorry to tell you this, but it's not. You're not. This rollback, it's bullshit. It's not a rollback. Okay, so here's the subtext of this rollback, because here's what didn't change. Employers are still going to require a digital version of the right to work checks, which means that if you want to work in the UK, then you need to be in the government's system. The gov.uk wallet is still coming. It is still rolling out. The National Data Library is still being built. NHS records, education records, economic data, all of that combined in one database in Oracle system. And they're calling it a sovereign cloud because it sounds safe, right? You know, UK data is just staying in the UK jurisdiction, right? Right? It's not leaving the jurisdiction, right? Yeah, about that. See, that's tough because Oracle controls the infrastructure, right? And Oracle employees are the one who administer the system. And Oracle is an American company, which means that it's subject to the U.S. Cloud Act, which means that the U.S. government can demand access to data stored by any American companies, even if that data is overseas, at any time for any reason. So whatever contracts Oracle has signed saying that, yeah, their data stays safe, it stays over there, that is usurped by the U.S. Cloud Act. And I don't know how many people know that. So Sovereign is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Look, the card was just the part that you could see. The database was always the point. And so look, if you want to push back on this in a way that is impactful and actually matters, then you have to understand first what you're fighting against, okay? Because it's not a card, it's not even Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is literally just a project manager, okay? And he's project managing for Tony Blair. And Tony Blair, which God knows he's profiting off of this, is just the vessel in which Larry Ellison's money flows through and then gets Oracle spread across the world. The product is Oracle and the architect is Larry Ellison. And I know I go in on him in every single video, but I still don't think that we are doing enough to push back on him. I mean, we are seeing how quickly he's monopolizing everything. Ding, ding, ding. I'm trying to ring the alarm bells here, people. Like, what are we doing? There's not much time left to be able to push back on this. And by push back, I mean we need to make this as difficult as possible on this man. We need to keep our government data separated, our healthcare, especially that data separated. So my message to the UK is this. Stop yelling at Downing Street and start asking why Oracle has a contract within every department of your government. Start asking why a company founded by a CIA contractor is now running your NHS patient records. Start asking why an American billionaire has any influence over British data policy or what British citizens do in their daily lives. And if you're in the US watching this, then please understand that we're next. This is a Rube Goldberg machine, okay? The dominoes are falling now, but it's gonna hit that marble and it's gonna go down the slide and then it's gonna hit a bottle cap that's gonna flick it and pop a balloon and we're gonna be the balloon that pops. And look, you can watch any one of my videos and see this man, Larry Ellison, is not only a patient man, but he's an obsessed man. He will stop at nothing to get what he wants. But you know what? We can do that too. We can be obsessed. We can not stop until we get what we want. You guys in the UK, you cannot stop until you get what you want. And at least now, you know where to look.
love Drey so much. She's on top of the game. She's all over Whitney Webb. I still say Whitney Webb's an architect because Whitney Webb tells you stuff after the fact, after she's written a book about it. Hello? Reply. She disappears for ages, comes back, writes with a book written to be released, which tells us all this stuff that's after the fact, and it's useless information to us. It's actually useless information, Whitney Webb. Other than the fact that it's probably, an AI version of the plan that was drawn up 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. See, people, this is what I mean about there is no five-year plan. There's no 10-year plan. This is like a 200-year goal for economic strategy. People are just playing to the strategy of the economics of it all. Who gets to drive? Okay, let's look at it this way. We really could look at it this way. Well, we're all passengers on a double-decker bus. We're all on the top, putting up with all the elements, all the bullshit, up top, no roof on it. And all the people in control are in the bottom deck. And the only thing that changes is who's driving. In the buses. In the one bus, everyone's heading in the same direction, like it or not. That's all we're voting for, who gets to drive. The bus is always going to end up in the same place. Who gets to be the train conductor? It's on a rail. It's on a track. Who gets to be the train conductor? Oh, this person drives a little bit smoother. He's still on the same track. Well, hello? Get off the train. Get off the bus. Because when it comes down to it, there's a low-hanging bridge coming and we're all going to get lopped. What I love about Drey, we both have a pattern brain. Mine's different to hers. Mine's different to most people's. It's very similar, but she goes through the data. She goes through the data, whereas I go through historical fact and social events. And we arrive at the same place, the same findings, coming from completely different objectives. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Stop waiting for somebody else to do something about it, because nobody else is going to do a damn thing about it. And see how towards the end she starts coming up with all the whys. Like I said, we haven't been asking why. All we've been asking is how and when. How are they going to do that? When's it going to happen? Why is it happening? If you know the why, then you know not what not to do. You know, at that point, you realise, okay, the why is pretty damn bad. It's not good for any of us. But it doesn't hit us all at once like a worldwide atom bomb. It takes that group and this group and this group and that group and that group. And then by the time people go, hang on, we should be doing something about this, like actually doing something about this, it's too late. There's not enough people left to walk away. You see, that's why they say there's too many people in the world. There's too many people for them to manage, in the sense that what happens if they all walk away from us? What happens in the event that they wake up, they actually do wake up, instead of taking the blue pill and the red pill, and then the blue pill, and then the red pill. This two-pill choice all over the world. One country takes a blue pill, another one takes a red pill, and it keeps us all different. What happens when they all stop taking the pills? And they're not asleep anymore? Because both pills are a sleeping pill. Have you figured that much out yet? With the Matrix euphemism of it? protesting, rallying, arguing, sending letters, arguing with it only validates it. It's not doing you any favours whatsoever. It's a stupid thing to do. Why? Because it keeps you in it. It keeps you from looking up, popping your head up and looking around and going, hang on, it's all clear sailing over there, smooth sailing. We can get off the ship, we can sail straight to that shore and leave them out here in the chop. Leave them to drown. Get off the bus, get off the train, whatever scenario, however you want to look at it. And what do we do? Well, what does any group of shipwrecked people do? Work to their strengths together to build shelter, to feed each other, to take care of each other's health, because without each other, you just die. Have you not seen Lord of the Flies? Okay, it's long enough. 55 minutes. It'll probably take me 2 days to get that to upload. Ooh, he's scratching on. I've been hanging around my cat too long. Even myself, just before I go, even myself, what have I done? I've even pivoted a bit in my garden in the sense of I'm not trying to grow a big, beautiful garden anymore of a whole bunch of varieties of stuff. I've brought it back to brass tacks. The necessities. It's mostly potatoes. Potatoes and ghastly broad beans. They're possibly one of the best beans you could grow. They grow fast, they grow big. You could grow broad beans out of a rotten sock. And you get a pretty decent yield out of them. Purple beans, there's another good bean to grow. Purple string bean, they're huge. You get a lot of iron and all the good stuff out of them. Meat, I can always get meat. There's always meat. A lot of people see a pest. I see an MRI. Meal ready to... an MRE, sorry, meal ready to eat. Coming to terms with snaring one and breaking its neck and skinning it and gutting it, that's the hardest part. Once you've done it a couple of times, and you've eaten it a couple of times, and you work out how to stew it, curry it, just like you would chicken. Beautiful. It's just coming to terms with that, procuring your own meat scenario. What are you doing, Panda? Come here. Come here. Ah. Hello. How you doing? How you doing? It's closer now. We're from here.